All right, welcome to another episode of NFL Outdated Cover 2 series. This episode we were talking about the Cleveland Browns, and I am joined by Christian from Down with the Browns podcast. How are you doing?
Great, man. Thanks for having me on here. It's an honor.
Absolutely. And I want to start out. I do have Iowa Hawkeye colors on here, not Steeler colors, and I want to make any diehard Browns people upset.
Yeah, we don't like the Steelers, so
That's That's what I hear. We can definitely get into Steelers, and I want to talk about some division quarterbacks. We'll get to that a little bit later. But first of all, the big thing that I want to talk about is your thoughts on the huge Deshaun Watson trade. Your reaction and maybe expectations, going into 2022.
yeah. So when all the hype around the Deshaun Watson coming to Cleveland happened, like I was kind of like, yeah, it's not going to happen. Like it did not feel like an Andrew Berry move because he's so analytical and just everything that he's went through. It's like, okay, it doesn't look very analytical to trade 3 first-round picks for a quarterback. And I was like, all right, they're going to give Baker one more year, yada, yada, yada. And then news comes out. Watson's already threw the Browns off the list. And you're like, okay, now we got to make ties with Baker again. And then he requests a trade. He's like, I'm not playing for you guys. And then next thing you know, Deshaun Watson's a Brown. And I'm like, well, because I was at work and I'm just sitting there and on my phone, I'm looking at it and I'm like, and then the alert pops up, and I'm like, "Oh my god!"
Yeah.
And people are like, "What's wrong? What's wrong? What's wrong?" And I'm like, "We just got Deshaun Watson." So I mean, it's going to be a fun time in Cleveland, I think, with Deshaun.
So, right after it happened, I had a chance to, interview John Suchan. I'm not sure if you follow his writing and stuff about the Browns, and he was talking about just how a lot of the fans were upset and wanted to, sell their season tickets
Hmm.
and all of that, and are are you on the other half of it? Like you're excited for Deshaun?
Yeah, I'm excited for his production on the field. I'm excited to see that and where it goes. I think when it first happened, I was just like, why did the Browns do this? I mean, I had that excitement because, like, okay, we've upgraded. We've got a top 10 quarterback or top 8 quarterback. And I'm like, oh, yeah. And then, but like, at what cost? Like the morality behind it. And you're like, because I mean, the whole allegations, it's tough to get past. Like as a fan,
Mhm.
it's gonna be hard to get past. But I mean, I probably won't buy his jersey, but I'll still support the Browns because at the end of the day, I'm not a Watson fan. I'm a Cleveland Browns fan. So
Do you think that obviously the Browns have been starving for a winner for a long time, right?
yeah.
And and, and do you think the Bengals being in the Super Bowl maybe played a role in this? Them thinking we need to win, we need a quarterback. I mean, do you think that played any part in them
oh
getting Watson?
a huge part of it. At the end of the year, you could just kind of tell they were kind of done with Baker. Uh, I mean, I started to buy into the okay, we're running it back with Baker, but you could tell like even in the Packers game, like Stefanski and him started to have a rift. Like you could see it. He's out there just throwing into triple coverage, and I mean, there's only so much you could put on that torn labrum because that torn
Mhm.
labrum doesn't cause you to throw it into triple coverage.
Right.
Uh, so, but yeah, them getting to the Super Bowl played a huge part in it because like the Bengals just went what like 3-2-14 2 years ago, and then 3-13 last year, and now they're in the Super Bowl. So, and they had the worst offensive line probably in the NFL, and still got there. So,
Yeah, and when you kind of look at it, I mean, obviously we're not quite sure what's going to happen game wise, with Deshaun Watson. I mean, are you hearing anything about like suspension? I mean, or what would you expect there to be for? I mean, how many games he might sit out?
so I've heard like a little bit of everything. I've heard it could be 4 to 6. I've heard 6 to 8, 8 to 10. Like it's just kind of untailing. I guess the more that comes out about the whole case and how the civil cases are going to get settled, because I'm hearing that might not even be settled till like 2023, 2024.
Wow, right.
So I mean, they're going to drag it out as long as they possibly can. And I I say that the news will be on his suspension probably by the end of June, I would say they'd have that. But it's just untailing where they're going to go because, like, I mean, Big Ben's was 6 and then they dropped it down to 4. But Kareem Hunt's was like 8, I believe. And so it's just kind of untailing where they're going to go with it.
Yeah, I mean, and when you look at this season, I mean, regardless of what happens, he's going to probably miss some games. I mean, are you kind of just, thinking this is going to be transition year and not really expecting much out of the team this year?
I would say the expectations will kind of still depend on that suspension because I still think Jacoby Brissett can come in and win you games. Like, not like go out there and throw 450 and drop 6 touchdowns. Like, I think he's good enough to get you down the field in position. And when you've got guys like Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt was the missing piece, I think, in last year's offense. Because once he goes down, you don't have that extra running back. Like, I mean, Dearness Johnson and Demetric Felton stepped in, played huge roles down the stretch. Puts his head down, and he's just, like, knocking everybody. Like, he does not care what happens to his body when he's out there. So, it's just – I think he brings that.
And this is easily the best backfield in the league, right?
Oh, yeah, easy. I love this running game. Like, I'm glad Stefanski's calling plays for this running back room.
Absolutely. And with that question then with Stefanski, I mean, do you trust Kevin Stefanski with this offense? I mean, he's shown obviously that he can do some good things, but do you really trust him?
Oh yeah, I think when you got a quarterback that doesn't throw it into triple coverage, I think that helps out a lot. I mean, I was defending Baker for most of the season last year. I'll be truthful on that. Like, I was like, oh, it's because the injury, It's they're not getting open. But then you start seeing the plays, like they'll show the replay. You'll see Jarvis Landry wide open, Dave Njoku's wide open, and he's throwing it into DPJ, who's got a corner and a safety on him. And you're like, okay. And then there's people wide open, like got your check down in Dearness, and he's open. And it's just it was happening a lot, and you can't put that on the coach.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of it is on Baker, and he seems to have just a fantastic like personality with his commercials and everything.
Yeah.
And I was never really on the Baker train, fantasy football wise. I just didn't quite see it. I mean, it'll be interesting to see kind of where he goes, and I'm sure he'll have a chip on his shoulder wherever he goes. I mean, so. Where do you see him going next? And do you think then they would do a commercial then to commemorate that?
So I think that the like most likely place is Seattle. I mean, that's just kind of the only one. I mean, Drew Lock, they could ride with him, or they could go with somebody in the draft. This quarterback class is not that good. I think that him going there on the 1-year contract kind of opens the door for them to draft a quarterback next year. If they don't like him, they like him. So, but if if Progressive does that commercial, that would be so funny because their headquarters is in Cleveland, and the baseball field for the Guardians now is Progressive Field. So it'd be kind of funny, or have like Deshaun Watson kind of take over. That'd be
right. Well, yeah, I mean, it's so crazy how quick this window closed. Like it almost seemed like, Baker was going to be there and in Cleveland, then he wasn't. But then also it seemed like there was going to be a tremendous trade market, and then that really closed quickly. And there's not really much. I mean, beyond Seattle, I mean, they're not going to release him, are they?
I wouldn't think so. I think that if it's getting closer to September. And I mean, you can't bring that guy into camp. Like you just got to get him off the books at that point. If it's like August or something, you got to get him out. But I still think that they'll get a deal done probably around draft time, maybe a little bit after, because I think you'll see teams kind of be more quarterback hungry after the draft. Because, as I said, like this quarterback class is not that good. Like Malik Willis, if he was in next year's class, he would not be picked probably till the 3rd round.
Right. So. Yeah. It's so interesting how that works too, is, you see all the arm talent at the pro days, and, that happens. I mean, all quarterbacks have good pro days.
Yeah. It's hard to have a bad one as a quarterback. So, cause like, I mean, everybody bought into Johnny Football. Everybody bought into Blake Bortles. Like, I mean, I'm not going to lie. I was like, Money Manziel, baby.
Right.
Like, so, I mean, the quarterbacks are easy to spell like at their pro days. So, but yeah.
Yeah, this is going to be an interesting offense this year with the addition of Amari Cooper. What are you kind of expecting from him this year?
I expect something that the Cleveland Browns have not had probably since, I would say, even just the move back, a well, no, I'd say since about Josh Gordon, a solidified number one receiver that can catch the ball. And the only knock I can really think of on Amari Cooper is just staying healthy.
Mhm.
That's been his downfall pretty much his whole career. But I mean, the dude's got some of the best route running in the game, some of the best hands. So,
Do you see him as better than Odell?
Yes, I would say now. I'd say when we got Odell, he, I'd say it was about the same because
Mhm.
we still got a younger Odell then. But I would say kind of toward the later of his time in Cleveland. No, like I think Amari's better.
And part of that, has to be on the quarterback as well. I mean, I was hearing, a lot of that might have been on, Baker because, I mean, you saw, I mean, before he got injured, Odell was on his way to being the MVP of the Super Bowl with how he's playing,
Yeah.
and so something about that quarterback. Because then I'm a Bears fan, and we
Mhm.
almost saw that. We did see that this year from Allen Robinson. His production went way down, and a lot of it was, coaching, offense, not really connected with Justin Fields, a quarterback.
Mhm.
So, you know, with receivers, it really matters how they're connected to the quarterback as well, right?
Yeah, and it just like felt like since he got here, like they were always trying to force that connection. Like you can't be doing that. Like he would just like force it down. And that second game of like the Odell Baker in New York against the Jets, you're like, okay, they've got it down because he went for like I think 150 yards, 2 touchdowns. You're like, okay, this is what we like to see. This is why we traded all this for. We traded Jabril the first and the third to get
Mhm.
him. So, but it never panned out.
Yeah, and it almost, I mean, it should have when you got Jarvis Landry in that offense as well. And
Yeah.
with him, I mean, is it possible that he comes back to the Browns, or where do you see Jarvis Landry landing?
I really hope Jarvis Landry's back with the Browns. I
Mhm.
think that a lot of it's just kind of the money. I think Jarvis wants a little bit more money than the Browns are willing to give because I think the
Mhm.
Browns are more looking to give about 5 to 7. He's wanting more like 10 to 12 because I mean he's wanting to bet on himself. And at the end of the day, I think Jarvis will either land where Odell lands or he'll be back in Cleveland. That's just kind of how I see it.
Yeah, that'll be interesting. I'm really shocked that he hasn't signed with like with the Packers, or I mean, because they need a receiver.
Yeah.
The draft is, I mean, there's a lot of receivers in the draft, but when you have a veteran, that makes a difference in an offense.
Yeah, and one thing that I've kind of noticed about this free agency, it's there's still a lot of talent still there, and I think a lot of these GMs, which I think Andrew Barry's doing this as well, they're waiting till after the draft, and then they're going to fill all the holes that they didn't get the draft.
And yeah, and we're seeing a lot of like just 1 year or contracts and stuff. I mean,
Mm.
as far as the free agents for the Browns, I mean, what has surprised you with that so far?
Like a surprising like free agency move that we've made.
Yeah, or maybe that they
Um,
haven't made.
I'm surprised that we've not tried to bring back Jadavion, which we have tried to. It's just not been pinned to paper, I guess. And defensive tackle, I mean Tavon Bryan, like he's gonna be one of them guys that's just kinda sub in, like, he's gonna play a play every once every series or something,
Mhm.
um, but, like, we don't have, like, a solidified starter at defensive tackle, like, we've got Jordan Elliott, we've got Tommy Togiai, and Tavon Bryant, like, I mean, I wanna see Tommy Togiai ball out and be our starter, I wanna see Jordan Elliott do that because, I mean, it's just easier, less money, I
Mhm.
mean, it's kinda cooler to see your guys kinda pan out, the guys that have the teams drafted and so, but I'm surprised we've not tried to get a guy like Akeem Hicks.
Mm.
That's who I want.
I tell you, yeah, as a Bears fan, I mean, when he was on, he was on. He's just, yeah.
So, like, okay, since you are a Bears fan, so, like, what are some of the pros on Akeem Hicks and, like, what are the cons on him?
Well, I mean, the cons, he was injured, right?
Mhm.
And he definitely is someone who's going to disrupt the offense, and he's going to get there. He's going to make some plays. I mean, he is. I mean, I'd have to kind of look, specifically, but I believe he's got a pretty quick first step. I mean, and he just, takes up a lot of space, right?
Yeah.
He's a beast. He really is, and part of it, was the coaching.
Yeah.
And probably the con too. I just have to look how old he is. I know he was a little bit older. I have to really look. Maybe he's not, but I, the injuries, I think were a big part, and he's looking for a change.
Uh-huh.
And if he doesn't have to be the man, right? If he's got all this other talent around him, I think that would really benefit him as well. Because in Chicago, there really
Yeah.
wasn't, I mean, he had Robert Quinn and everything like that, and but and that was mainly this year, but that Robert Quinn kind of broke out. But you know, I really, see him. If he's with the Browns, that would be a good spot.
Yeah, on our podcast, we've talked about him numerous times as like he's like being the guy I've picked like for the Browns to target in free agency since like back in January, and like I can just see hearing him next to Miles Garrett and
Hmm.
Jadeveon Clowney because I think Clowney's going to be back. I just think he's just waiting it out. Uh, but just Miles Garrett, Akeem Hicks, whoever you draft at 44, I think the 44th pick is going to be a defensive tackle. And then Jadeveon Clowney. That's going to be hard to stop. Plus our secondary, bringing back all the starters.
Hmm.
And down the stretch, the defense, I think, played top 5 defense in the league.
So with that, then with the defense, then I mean, they played well. You said toward the end. I mean, is that sustainable for the full season? Do you think?
I think that, well, at the beginning of the year, that was the thing. You're like, okay, we've went out and spent all this money and it's not showing yet. And then the Cincinnati game hit, and then that's when I think the defense clicked. Right off the bat, Denzel Ward pick sixes Joe Burrow,
Hmm.
and I think from that moment on, the defense kind of clicked. They're like, okay, we know what we're doing, we know our scheme. And after that, I mean, there was games like the Packers game. They held them to 24 points, and most of their drives were on their own side. Like the Packers had like 40 yards because Baker threw a pick on like the first play.
Hmm.
So, and I mean that those games are hard to win, and then against Baltimore in Baltimore, they caused 4 turnovers and they just couldn't get it done on the offensive side of the ball. So it's just
So with that defense, I mean, and when you kind of look at the possibilities for the draft, I mean, do you have some kind of players in mind that you would like the Browns to target?
yeah. So at 44, I would like to see Travis Jones out of UConn or Logan Hall out of Houston. Them two, I think, could help solidify the middle of that D line. Um, I think if you go more Logan Hall, you're going more pass rush. But if you go Travis Jones, you're going more like all around. Because I think he's more of the all around like guy that's going to be out there like most of your time. And I think that he'd probably be your eventual like you'd sign him big long term and just kind of your beef in the middle type guy.
When you kind of look at a long term with this season, do you see them being in the mix to kind of win the division, or what do you kind of see for this season?
So I think that we can still compete with the rest of the AFC North. I think that the Steelers, since they've lost Big Ben, they've kind of lost a lot of pieces. Um, I think they're going to be at the bottom of the AFC North. I mean, but Mike Tomlin's a great coach. He'll have them right in there with the rest of the pack. So it won't be like a 4-12 team. They'll still be like a 7-10, 8-9, 9-8, like one of them top teams. Um, the Bengals, I know they're the hot team, but they like I know it's going to sound cocky, but the Browns defense has their number.
Hmm.
Miles Garrett has their number. Denzel Ward has Jamar Chase's number. I mean, this is even back to 2018. Like, I mean, we've just had the Bengals number. And I think that the Ravens will probably win the AFC North because nobody's really looking at them. Everybody's doubting Lamar Jackson. Lamar Jackson was an MVP for a reason. Um, and then they're going to get all their weapons back. J.K. Dobbins, Gus Edwards, uh, Bateman's going into his second year. Marquise
Mhm.
Brown's he's gonna bring it this year. So
And Mark Andrews, yeah.
yeah, they're gonna be tough to stop.
So yeah, I mean, you look at division quarterbacks. Obviously, we're not 100% sure, who's going to start the season for the Browns. It probably, will be Jacoby Brissett. I'm guessing, right?
I would assume so,
Yeah,
unless it's just some miraculous miracle happens and Deshaun's not suspended at all,
yeah, yeah.
which is highly unlikely.
Right. And so then you look at the division quarterbacks. I mean, what are your thoughts on each of the you know probable starters on each team?
So, like, rank them? Is that what you're
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
So, I mean, obvious Mitchell Trubisky's probably the bottom. I would say that's who I'm guessing the Steelers are gonna rock with as their
yep.
week 1 starter. So Mitchell Trubisky. This one's hard, because I mean, Watson, Lamar, and Burrow are all interchangeable. It's just kinda your view on it. I mean, I'm gonna say Lamar's 3rd,
Okay.
and then Watson 2, and then Burrow 1.
Absolutely. Yeah. The way Burrow's, played and, having a horrible offensive line and still kind of getting him to the Super Bowl, still,
Yeah.
Are you worried at all about the layoff for Watson?
No, I think he's still in good shape. He's still young, so it ain't like he's, like, 30 something and he's gotta get right. Like, I mean, he was still in the facility, he was still working out. Like, it's not like he was away from the game. And then last year he wasn't suspended, he didn't play. So I mean, he was still in the room with the guys working out, going through reps and stuff. So I mean,
Yeah. And that was such a weird situation. You almost you hope, they get the Baker Mayfield, situation all figured out
mhm.
before everything starts. Cause that almost can be like a Deshaun Watson situation if he's there
Yeah.
and just kind of, hanging around and whatnot.
Yeah, and once they get Baker off the roster, I mean, that opens up even more for the cap too to some free agents. So I wanna say that they'll move him. I wanna say sooner than later, because I mean, I would like to see him off the roster because I'm tired of seeing on Twitter this constant Baker war. That's all I see, and it's just it's old to me. Like, I've kinda already disconnected him from the Browns. So
So, well, yeah, I mean, I'm sure he's disconnected as well. I mean, before the trade, you said you were kind of out on him as well, or
on, Baker,
yeah,
so I talked myself into, like, running it back one more year. I was like, "You don't even think about giving him any money till after the season, finish the full season." I was like, "If he sucks, he sucks, and then we next year's draft class." Because 'cause I'm really high. I know it's kinda biased, but I'm really high on Will Levis out of Kentucky. Uh,
really,
and so, I mean, I was thinking you could get him later in the first because I think Baker's a good enough quarterback to win games. I think he's not good enough to get you to the promised land. If that makes sense. And the way I kinda look at this Deshaun Watson trade is kinda how the Toronto Raptors traded
mm,
DeMar DeRozan, the fan favorite, the guy who's been their homegrown top guy, traded him for Kawhi to win that championship. I
hmm
mean, we do have Watson for more than 1 year, but so that's just kinda how I see the whole quarterback swap thing.
well, yeah, so you look at then the talent that's there. Fan wise, it'll be interesting how that all shakes down. But you look on the field, and the Browns are set up to compete, for the playoffs and for a Super Bowl for quite a few years here, aren't they?
Yeah, I would say that. I mean, you're gonna have to tie up some like positions because I mean, this Watson contract, it's not gonna hit this year, but after this year, you're gonna have that $54 million cap hit every year for the next 4 years, and that's a hefty piece of the cap. So guys that you have on the contracts on these shorter term contracts, they might not be available. I mean, they might take a discount to stay if you can like promise them a ring, pretty much, but I mean, that only Tom Brady's pretty much the only guy I've really seen be able to get a bunch of vets to sign cheap.
Right. And you look at those teams that have won the Super Bowl, gotten to the Super Bowl. I mean, it, it's rarely been, one of these, top quarterbacks that makes all this money. So that's kind of interesting because you need to fill in all these other, pieces on the team as well.
Yeah, but the one thing I have noticed that Andrew Berry did, which is great, is like Myles Garrett. His contract went into effect, I believe, last year, and
Hmm.
he signed a 4-year deal, so he's under contract for the next 3 years. Nick Chubb, same thing. Kareem Hunt's still under contract. Amari Cooper's still under contract. So a lot of our key guys, except Denzel Ward, his contract ends this year. He's about the only one I can think of. Like we re-signed Joe Batonio last year, re-signed
Hmm.
Wyatt Taylor. Conklin's contract ends. So I mean, guys like that. I mean, you're gonna lose like a Conklin. You're gonna lose like a JC Treader, which we've already
Hmm.
lost. You're gonna have these guys that are good, but like not top guys. It's kind of like how Kansas City's been doing. Like that's how I kind of picture it. It's like they've been able to keep all their key pieces, but
Hmm.
they're interchanging it with other guys. So
You bring up Kansas City, and it'll be interesting to see, with Tyreek Hill being gone,
yeah,
what the offense, because Patrick Mahomes is a top quarterback. I mean, there's no denying that,
oh
but
yeah,
it makes a difference, the receivers that he has, and Tyreek Hill really, I don't want to say made Patrick Mahomes, but really kind of made that Super Bowl happen if he, all those plays.
yeah. I mean, even going back to the playoff game against
Hmm.
Buffalo, I mean, you don't have a burner like Tyreek Hill. You're not making that drive down the field. I mean, and a guy like Travis Kelsey, of course, but I mean, that's it. They're going to take a hit for sure because Tyreek Hill always loomed, and it was always hard to stop Tyreek and Travis Kelsey. So you're going to see a lot more defensives cover Travis Kelsey more, and you're gonna see him try to make Cole Hardman and Juju Smith-Schuster beat you. So
Yeah, and so I guess the point that I was going to make on that is they really kind of sold out for the Super Bowl win. They got that win,
mhm.
and they haven't won another one. So it'll be interesting to see kind of how they adjust, adapt. And then my question is, obviously the Browns are all sold, all in on winning a Super Bowl.
Mhm.
And what would a Super Bowl mean to the Browns and to Cleveland?
Oh man, the city might burn down. Like I don't live in Cleveland, but my family's from Cleveland, and it's a Browns town. You could talk Indians or Guardians, you can talk Cavaliers, but at the end of the day, if you think that the 2016 championship parade was packed, times that by about 15, and the streets are on fire. Like that's pretty much what's going to happen if the Browns win a Super Bowl. I'll cry. I'll probably break down because I cried when we went to the playoffs and beat Pittsburgh in Pittsburgh. Like I'm not gonna lie, like I teared up. I was like, this is the first because like I mean I'm just 22. I've never seen a Browns playoff win until last year, and so it's a Super Bowl win. I can't even really like. I mean, I think about it a lot, like seeing them hoist it up in Cleveland, but like to actually have it happen, I don't know.
Well, yeah, and so you bring that up, and I'm presumably then your family's been Browns fans for quite a while then.
Yeah, like my dad was born in Cleveland, in Perry. So I mean, it's just orange and brown till we all die. So
So yeah, I had a question, and I actually did a interview with a Steelers fan and Steelers podcaster, and his question was, that this is a different Browns team. I mean, how do Browns fans kind of like reconcile? Because basically all the Browns history kind of went along with the Ravens. So
yeah.
how do you guys kind of reconcile that as Browns fans?
So we still claim everything pre 99. I mean, I never really got to watch anything, but like I mean, behind me, I don't know if you can see it,
Yeah, yeah,
but there's a Clay Matthews jersey right there, and then I have
yeah.
some like pictures of like the older guys that played, and I've got a Jim Brown jersey
Yep.
on. So I mean, we still claim all that, and we look at the history, and like that's what we all love because like the dog pound, and the dog pound was
Hmm.
made back in the 80s, and it's just I love hearing like the older Browns fans tell stories about like Eric Metcalf going off and
Hmm.
Bernie Kosar and Brian Sapp, and I just love hearing all that because as a younger Browns fan, I've never really got that. Like Joe Thomas has been like the closest to like a legend I've got to watch as a Browns fan, and so, I mean, getting a guy like Watson, who's like a bona fide quarterback, It's I mean, it's exciting, but, like, it's still, like, everything around him.
Right, right. Well, yeah, I mean, you kinda and I have the, dog pound behind us here, so
Yes, sir.
and, I'm guessing so it's kind of more, the Cleveland, city history, with the team and that's part of, obviously, if all officially all the, records went with the Ravens, it's still kind of like it happened in Cleveland, so it's still there.
Yeah, so when the move happened, um, they left all the team's history. That's why, like, the Ravens have all their stuff is theirs, like, they don't get all, like, the AFC North champion or the AFC Central championships, like, it's all, like, in Cleveland still.
Oh, it
It's like
is still there.
so all the history got to stay in Cleveland because, I mean, they kinda knew there'd be another team in Cleveland, I guess, when it
Right.
happened, but the move actually the year that the move happened, like, back, it was in 1999, and that was the year I was born, so
I'm feeling old now, so well, speaking of, teams history and you're a Kentucky fan, right?
Yes, sir, yes, sir.
And the Wildcats have some pretty good prospects as well. Like, is it Wandale Robinson?
Yeah, that dude, he's a game changer. I mean, his size, they list him at 5'11". I've been fairly close to him because I'm actually a Kentucky season ticket holder. He's not 5'11", he's about 5'7", but
Hmm.
the dude is shifty, he's fast, and he's got glue on his hands. This guy will catch it and get hit stick and not drop the ball. So, and you're Iowa. I mean, I hate to bring this up, but
No,
you're a Hawkeye fan.
I
You got to
am.
see Wandale what he does when he gets a little separation and gets a little
Oh,
open.
oh, absolutely. Yeah, that was. Yeah, I thought I was going to win, and then nope.
Yeah.
Yeah. So in obviously you're a fan of him. If he goes to one of your AFC rival teams, you're probably not going to root for him, right?
No, I've seen it happen like with Bud Dupree.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, it's hard to. I mean, you want to see your boys succeed, the guys you got to watch play in college, but it's just when they go to a bitter rival like that, it's hard to root for them.
Do you see him kind of being more like a Tyreek Hill? What would his NFL comparison be at the moment?
I would I don't wanna say Debo Samuel, but I
Mm,
could see a team using him kinda like that role because he's really quick, he's really shifty, and you could easily use him like, I mean, Scott Frost used him a lot in the running back role, but Kentucky used him as what he really is, a wide receiver, so, I mean, he can play both. So, that's why I think Debo Samuel.
yeah, and that'll be interesting. Kind of where he lands. I mean, you look at some of these wide receivers, and you know you can see kind of their talent, but a lot of it's where they land in the coaching as well.
Yeah, like, I mean, there's a guy I think that's gonna fall, though, in this draft, and I really hope he does, and it is Treylon Burks out of
Mm-hmm.
Arkansas. I think he's starting to give me DK Metcalf vibes, the way he performed at the, combine, like, everybody was really hyped up on DK. "Oh, he's gonna be the first wide receiver taken," and then he falls like second. So, if he's there at 44, it's gonna be hard for the Browns not to take him.
Yeah, I mean, when you look at what they need, I mean that would be huge. He would be able to kind of really he wouldn't be the focal point of the offense either. He wouldn't need to be.
Yeah, I think that, if the Browns don't get a guy like Jarvis and they do end up getting a guy like being able to draft a Treylon Burks, which is I don't know if it'll happen, but, I mean, I'm really praying that he falls and he's there at 44. But if we can get a guy like Treylon Burks, I don't think that he'll be the number 2 receiver. I think Donovan Peoples-Jones will.
Mm.
I think you'll throw him there, like, as your wide receiver 3. So
Yeah, that's interesting. Uh, talk a little bit about Donovan Peoples Jones because I mean he came on. He had a lot of he had some great plays this year. I mean, is he going to be a big part of the offense regardless?
yeah, I think that he is a guy Kevin Stefanski really likes.
Hmm.
I mean, as you could tell, like, down the stretch, they started throwing him in that wide receiver 1 role even when Jarvis Landry out in the field, and I don't think he was ready for it just yet, and I mean, he was still making plays.
Mhm.
I want to say he's top 5 in like yards per catch, like last year. So, I mean, the dude's got some burners on him to be 6'2", 6'3", and I think that he's going to be special in Cleveland, man. Like, I mean, going back to the 2020 season against Cincinnati, he went off. He had the game-winning touchdown, and then there was a couple other games, like the Tennessee game. He had a 75-yard touchdown reception, and he's going to be special. I mean, I know it's kind of biased, but I mean, you see the flashes. He's just so young still. He's just 22 or 23. So I mean, he's still got that time to grow and as he gets older and stuff. But I think that they're going to really try to push him to be that wide receiver too, is why you haven't really seen them go after that wide receiver too yet.
It'll be interesting to see how he connects with Deshaun as well.
Oh yeah, I'm excited to see that connection.
What do you talking about other pass catchers? What do you make of the tight end situation?
So I'm a really big fan of David Njoku. As of, like last year, I mean, I went to a couple games and I saw Austin Hooper. Like, I mean, the dude, I called him baby feet and stone hands because, like, I mean, as soon as the ball would get thrown his direction, he would try to catch it and fall. And you're like,
Mhm.
why are you doing this, man? Like, it's 3rd and 6, and you're running a 4 yard out route and then and falling. Like, no, like stop. And then, but David Njoku, man, he's had tight end one written all over him since 2020, and he was our leading receiver other than Donovan Peoples-Jones. He's just a tank. Like, I mean, the improvements he's made since we've drafted him, because like when we drafted him, he couldn't block. Like, that was his knock. Like, he cannot block. And then 2020 happens, and he's like one of the best blocking tight ends, and he's really just improved his game. And I mean, even though he did request a trade last year, he just didn't want to have that competition with Austin Hooper. Now look at him; he's the one getting paid.
Yeah, and what do you? I mean, do you see a spot for Harrison Bryant then, or is he kind of the odd man out?
So I think that he's going to be the tight end too. Um, and he's shown flashes, and he's a Stefanski guy. Stefanski really likes his tight ends. So honestly, I see us picking up another tight end, maybe through the draft or maybe through free agency, kind of like a lower budget tight end. But I really think they're really high on Harrison Bryant as well.
And when you say Stefanski guy, what do you kind of mean?
He likes to utilize the tight end, so he's a guy that can go out there and block really well, and
Mhm.
then also go out and catch and run routes pretty good for a tight end. Like, I mean, he won the I want to say it's called the Mackey Award for tight
Mhm.
ends
Mhm.
back when he was drafted, and he was one of Stefanski's guy, because Stefanski was really high on him back in the 2020 draft. So
Yeah, I have him stashed on one of my dynasty rosters. I'm not quite sure what to do with him, so
and keep him,
keep him. Okay,
keep him.
I'm
He'll be a
gonna
big
keep
tight
him.
end.
Well, when when you look at this season, and obviously we haven't gotten the draft yet,
Yeah.
and so there's a lot to happen there, and get to the season. When we get to the end of the season, regardless of win loss, what do you want to see from the team to say, okay, they've made a positive step?
I want to see us beat Pittsburgh.
Mm-hmm.
That's something we like. I mean, we'll beat them. We'll split with them, even like in our good years, like last year. We didn't beat them. 2 years ago, we split with them. And I mean, we did go into Pittsburgh and beat the dog crap out of them
Yeah.
in the playoffs. But I mean, because like, I mean, that playoff win meant so much. I mean, even though it was a win, but it was in Pittsburgh. And so that meant so much more, because like, even as a younger fan, that's all we've seen is Pittsburgh and Big Ben just dominate the Browns year after year, and to go in there and just kick them in the mouth, and then win it. It just felt so much more. So if we can sweep Pittsburgh, I know they're gonna have a down year this year, but just still go into Pittsburgh, beat them real good when they come into Cleveland, even just shut them up even more, because like we've just not done that.
So yeah, so you would probably say the Steelers are the bigger rivalry, or is it the Bengals, or what's the biggest rivalry?
So the Bengals really haven't. We've never really had that rivalry, like since because like it's either been like, because like I mean they've both been really bad.
Hmm.
I think there's going to be a rivalry, like a bigger one within the next couple of years, because the Bengals are on the rise with Joe Burrow, and I think we'll be in the playoffs and contending for Super Bowls with Watson. So it'll be kind of that cutthroat type thing with them. But I would say Pittsburgh's my like, number one enemy, then Baltimore, and then the Bengals.
Yeah, I mean, that's so interesting too with the history, with the games and stuff. But when you kind of look back with the Ravens, with basically it used to be the Browns. So I mean, I don't know if some older fans or
Oh
but
yeah, like Art Modell, that's a cuss word in Cleveland.
right.
I mean, there's people like like there was a guy who peed on his grave, so that
Wow.
was a Browns fan. So, so yeah, that's like a big cuss word.
We got Ron Smooth here saying beat Pittsburgh. He's
Yes.
um, and maybe he doesn't think it's going to happen. But so I mean that'll be interesting. I don't know. I mean, I really don't know what to make of the Browns this year. I mean, when you look at it, it's just I mean, they have to be uh, you know, obviously everything with Deshaun, right?
Yeah,
And there's so much talent there. You're right though. They do have more going for them than Pittsburgh. Um, yeah, it's just kind of when you think about it.
yeah, and I think that like Jacoby Brissett, as I said earlier, I think he's good enough to win some games for you. But I think that the Josh Dobbs signing, I think that's a very underrated signing because he's a very intelligent man.
Hmm.
And Big Ben even said that was his go-to guy, like to go and talk like about the game plan and stuff in the quarterback room. So
Yeah, he just he tweeted out the other day that he needed to change his avatar,
yeah, yeah, he needs to change that real quick. But
and that was such a tough thing to hear. The news with Pittsburgh as well. With that death and stuff. It's just that was
yeah,
tough to hear.
yeah, it really was. Like, I mean, I was kind of high on Haskins. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, my dad, he's an Ohio State fan, so like, I mean, I'll watch a lot of like Big Ten football, which I just love to watch football. And I mean, I remember watching him come in against Michigan
Hmm.
and just dog stomped them. Which I mean, Ohio State's kind of done that to Michigan, except last year. But
Hmm.
it's and I mean, he was a phenomenal quarterback at Ohio State. And he, from everything I've heard, he was just like this great guy to be around, always smiling, put in the work, and it's crazy to hear, man.
Well, and he was almost going to, I think, probably compete with Mitchell Trubisky,
Yeah,
for that role there.
yeah, I guarantee he would have gave a run for his money because I mean, he's got a cannon. Or,
Yeah,
I mean,
Haskins did,
he.
yeah.
So.
Well, this has been fantastic. I definitely appreciate your time. And where can everyone find you again?
So you can find us on Apple Podcast, on Spotify, and our podcast is called Down with the Browns. So you can find us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, pretty much anywhere you can find podcasts. So
Do you guys have any specific nights that you record?
we usually try to put out on Tuesdays,
Hmm.
but once the season gets a little bit closer, we're going to start putting out more content,
Hmm.
and we'll probably be doing some lives here soon.
Nice.
So I'd say probably within the next 2 weeks, and even closer to draft time. Um, you'll see us doing some lives, so we'll hopefully be doing stuff like this, and maybe we can have you on.
Absolutely. I'd love
Yeah,
to
with us.
join. And, especially, when draft comes and we kind of know a little bit more, I think that'll help, when the rosters are filled out and a little bit more stuff to talk about. But I think it's going to be an interesting season regardless for the Browns.
Oh yeah, hopefully it's a good one.
That's true. Yeah. Hopefully, and do you see if Deshaun Watson, starts to really, win and win at a high level? Do you think some of these fans will kind of turn the corner on him?
Yeah, I mean it's just kind of I guess the old wives' tale. It's like winning cures all. So
Hmm.
that's how I think once he starts winning games and once he's more active in the community and helping out with that, more people will kind of give on to the Browns and start coming back and rooting for him again. So
Yeah, it's hard. It's hard not to root for a team that you've kind of been so connected with. I'm sure.
yeah.
So So, well, thanks again. Yeah, this has been NFL Outdated Cover 2 series. We're definitely going to have you again on, and I look forward to connecting with you as we get closer to the season. Thanks again, Christian.
Thanks for having me, man. It's an honor.